hello everyone. So I'm just going to discuss a little bit about the culture in American Samoa and how GIS can be used there to move forward in planning. American Samoa is a territory of the United States, so it has a mixed culture between kind of our fast-paced, big cars, lots of food, and traditional slower-paced culture. And it's located 14 degrees south of the equator in the middle of the South Pacific, basically. And it's about 77 square miles, so it's a very small island with steep mountains interior, and so very limited land and very limited resources on the island, so it's important to plan for the resources. And the island system is land tenure system, so instead of parcels, like most government land is broken up into parcels and the government kind of controls the land, here in American Samoa, the villages are the delineations of the island, and the villages are run by matais or chiefs, so they are the ones who really oversee what happens within their boundaries. So resource planning is much different. And within these villages, these chiefs have, there's a process and a protocol and hierarchy when you're planning and dealing with the villages. The first chief will have, the matai is the most important. He will sit in a certain spot, and then another person will sit in a certain spot. And how you approach them, you have to go through their protocol and talk to the highest first, and then pass down the chain of command. So it can make planning very complicated. However, we coordinate between government and village, and in the government we hold plans and information about resources, but the village really holds ownership of the land, so the two need to meet, and so that's a big gap when dealing with resource management. So GIS is something that can help fill that gap in communicating across this village versus the government in American Samoa. So we've been using GIS to kind of set boundaries. For example, with wetlands, it's important for us to understand where the wetlands boundaries are for permitting houses, but what the science says and what the villagers say are very different. So by integrating the two together in an activity of delineating wetlands, you can provide a more accurate and manageable area. And we've engaged in students there as well. By nature, they know their land very well and they understand navigation very well. So everyone seems to be very interested in GIS, and it promotes kind of a collaborative, friendly environment when it's used. So a couple examples, here's what I was talking about with the wetlands. So the blue boundary there is what the science study said that the wetland delineation was, but the village stated that it was the green line. So through the exercise, we were able to come into an agreed upon wetland boundary that then could be used for regulation for buffers and setbacks for where it's okay to build. And without the community-based GIS, probably wouldn't have been able to agree upon that. It's also useful for collecting community-based resource management and traditional knowledge, so that people know a lot about the history of their resources, where there's been fish before and not now. So collecting that and bringing that into GIS to use for resource management is very important, and also for hazards planning. We had a big tsunami recently, and now they're making evacuation maps using kind of community-based GIS, working with the villages and working with GIS. And there's a lot of different ways to go about engaging the community with GIS. You can go with a low-tech or a higher-tech process. With low-tech, you can bring paper maps to the field, but you want to make sure you use the same scale, because you have to then scan and georeference everything back into your systems if you use low-tech. And high-tech saves a lot on processing time, but it just depends if you have the access to power for going out into the field with a laptop. But there's a lot of really cool websites and information out there on community GIS to engage in, with the local people for their resource management. So, Fafatai, thank you.